All right, the country's innovation landscape is buzzing. Accelerators, corporate and challenges and university innovation centers are multiplying, and also more local startups are securing funding, entering regional markets and as well as winning competitions. But beyond the headlines, there are deeper questions. How inclusive is this growth? Why does most of the momentum remain concentrated in Klang Valley? And what will it take to unlock opportunities for founders in smaller cities and rural areas? Joining us to unpack these issues is Ahmad Azuar Zainuddin, CEO of Satu Creative. Good morning, Azuar. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, congratulations on your appointment as the new Regional Advisory Committee and members of Andy East and Southeast Asia. Let's talk about the topic. It's very crucial and important. How would you describe the maturity of Malaysia's startup ecosystem entering 2026 and particularly beyond the Klang Valley?
Good morning, Najib. Good morning, viewers of AWANI. If we look at the momentum that the Malaysian startup ecosystem had in 2025, it is amazing. We see more accelerators, we've seen more parties involved, from universities to corporates to, of course, the government are always there. So we see that the ecosystem is very much maturing, and we are no longer focused on just, for example, chasing to be the unicorn, but more impact-driven, more inclusivity. So that's something that's positive when we look at the ecosystem. However, what is still true beyond the headline and the sound bites is the opportunities are still very much locked in the economic center, particularly in Klang Valley. So from there are gaps. That's something that we can look forward to improving in 2026 in terms of providing more capital, more network, more support beyond Klang Valley into other parts of Malaysia, Penang, Sarawak, Sabah, Johor, and so on.
And also, what signals, tell us that regional innovation hubs are rising, and where are we seeing basically the strongest momentum?
We see, of course, traditionally states like Johor, like Penang, for example, Penang, the folks in Digital Penang are doing an amazing job. You see how they differentiate what are the value proposition compared to Klang Valley, offering more, for instance, hard tech, deep tech programs. We also see Sarawak with the government aggressively pushing for digital economy, the green economy. We see concentrated programs that are being run, and most positively as well, that we see collaboration between the federal government, state government, local government, as well as corporates and MNCs that are coming forward to support this important initiative.
And also, which structural, gaps still prevent equitable access to support, for founders outside major cities, basically?
Excellent question, Najib. This is a conversation that I had recently with one of the state government lead, where when they look at programs, a lot of programs favors groups that are already advantaged. For example, coming from a strong economic background, a strong education. However, when we look at that as a current state, we see that there are gaps, because Malaysians are very talented. It's just that they are locked out from opportunities. So, and it is just not economic. Sometimes it is also other barriers. For example, women entrepreneurs, for example, need to, if they want to venture into entrepreneurship, they have a lot of responsibility. I think we see that 70% of unpaid work is actually done by the fairer sex. So looking at that, we need to remove these barriers to entry. For example, if entrepreneurs that are not so fortunate, they have to build their startup, they want to de-risk their startup, they need capital. So how do we design programs that caters to these needs? I think this is something that I would call, rather than having a one-size-fits-all or a copy and paste program, it is very important that we be very intentional in how we design program. And it's also very important that when we run program, the objective is not just to count the head, for instance, or how much money is being disbursed, but more importantly, how is the startup growing? How is it giving impact to the local economy? And this is so much more important when we look at the gap between urban and rural, for example, primary, secondary, and tertiary cities, where we need to be a bit more intentional, as I mentioned, in how we design our programs.
And as well, how does the concentration of funding and acceleration programs in the Klang Valley shape basically national innovation outcomes, and how can we further expand these programs?
Yeah, I mean, kudos to all parties involved. I think you have like Meranti, Cradle,
Right.
MDEC, all doing an amazing job. And we see over the years, we've been running accelerators for many, many years now, and we see the evolution of the startups that are applying and going through our program. However, what we see, there is still opportunities, because if we do not develop opportunities in rural areas, there will be place-based underinvestment.
Right.
And ultimately, that will affect national outcome, especially when we're looking at raising the ceiling and raising the floor with the government. So I would call all parties involved to consider that when designing, rather than having a national program, but also look at local context, local opportunity, and tap on the strength that they have in rural areas. For example, they have a lot of land, for instance, for agriculture. We have issues with food costs rising and things like that. So these are, when we design program, be a bit more intentional rather than having everything, for instance, fintech, which are amazing, but to cater more to what are the strengths. For example, if we look at Langkawi, perhaps opportunity for more tourism focus, and along those lines, Najib.
And also at the same time, you emphasis on the inclusion as a strategy. And what does that mean in terms of practical program design and also policy making?
I think one thing that we can apply in answering that question is to use a simple eye test.
Right.
Who are joining this program? Are we seeing similar folks going through program after program, or are we expanding to new network? And I think this requires us to play more of an ecosystem building, coordination approach. That's one part of it, and making participation more possible, ensuring that no one is left behind, understanding what are the barriers. How do we design our program to make sure that people are able to attend, people are able to benefit from what the program are offering? And at the same time, when we design programs, I think at Satu Creative, we put a lot of emphasis on the mentors, for instance. Are they one size fits all, or they are tailored to the need of, for example, go running program in Kota Kinabalu or Kuching? How does this program, how does these mentors matches and the needs of the startup that are coming through from these secondary and even rural areas?
And also, what are the most, I would say, overlooked elements ecosystem builders, must consider if they truly want to expand opportunity across a region?
Coordination is the name of the game here.
Right.
So looking at this, no one single entity can do everything alone. I think we tend to look at it like this is X program, this is Y program. But more important is this is the entrepreneurs program. And how do we support them often requires resources, talents, capacities of various organizations. So in addressing this overlooked element, ecosystem building is so crucial. I think the other part is there are a lot of programs that help with capacity building, with funding, but what a lot of the entrepreneurs, when I speak to them, what they need are customers. So looking at this, there are, I guess, opportunities for us to encourage more pilot opportunity. And I think this should not rest alone on the responsibility of large organizations. I can imagine those SMEs, for instance, can also play a role in working together with startups to pilot solutions that in turn will validate the product and grow the business.
Also, where do founders struggle most on the path of idea validation to real commercial tractions? What types of support or technical, or be it financial or network based, are most critical at the inflection point?
Yeah. For many startups, the challenging part are the early stage. Of course, a lot of support would like to come in at later stages where it is a little bit more, if I can say this morning, sexy, where I see that. So where the amount, the numbers that are, the headline numbers are being announced are huge, right? So with a lot of businesses, when they are growing, the risk, among the highest risk is at the early part where they call it the valley of death. This is where they are testing the idea, trying to build the MVP and finding the product market fit. So in this part, it cannot be a touch and go or a low touch approach. It has to be a high touch approach. Mentors need to build understanding and rapport with the businesses to understand and share the objective of what needs to happen to grow the business. I think secondly, I would love to see 2026 more commercialization opportunity for these businesses and allowing them to test the product, get real market feedback that will allow them to enhance and improve the product for them to scale. I think thirdly, rather than giving a lot of funding at early stage, we need to be more accountable. I think I believe that more, I guess, proof points need to be there with early stage funding. And I think for entrepreneurs as well, if you do not disclose your data, share your information, that will make an opaque and less transparent situation where it might affect future funders. So we need to look at this as an ecosystem play. While one startup supporting several jobs, supporting the local economy, ultimately the result will be a better, more vibrant, sophisticated ecosystem for Malaysia.